In a game that was a lot more stressful than it had to be, the Lions win again 37-24 over the Cincinnati Bengals in a game, like I said, that the Lions were in control of for most of the time, and I was never really worried about them losing. But the fourth quarter, it just got a little too close for comfort. Similar to last week's win over the Browns, the Lions were not really in jeopardy of losing at any point. And yet, coming out of the game, I'm still largely disappointed with various aspects of the game because the team played well, but they didn't play great, and they definitely did not put on as dominant of a performance as they could have. And I will give the Bengals credit, full credit for them for fighting and clawing their way back into that game. They could have just as easily rolled over and died in that fourth quarter, but they decided that they wanted to make things interesting. And now, suddenly, it gives me a little bit of pause about this defense as we are going into a much more difficult matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs next week, where the Lions are going to have to put forth a better effort than they've had the last couple of weeks. We will start with that opening drive, though, as the Lions were able to effortlessly slice and dice their way through the Bengals defense to start this game, ending with a Sam Laporta touchdown to kick off the scoring. And right away, it was like, okay, we're feeling good. Offense, we got a touchdown. Things are going great. Defense gets up, and there was a couple of dumb penalties. There was a penalty on Aiden Hutchinson for offsides that wiped out a Hutchinson sack that would have ended a drive. One play later, Kirby Joseph gets an unnecessary roughness penalty that gives the Bengals the ball in decent field position, but the Lions defense holds to a punt, and at that point, we're like, okay, score on offense, get a stop on defense, and that's how the game was supposed to go. And then a weird thing happened. The Lions offense kind of just stopped being good. They were moving the ball on that second drive, but a Trey Hendrickson strip sack would give the Bengals the ball back. And then when the Lions got the ball a third time, they once again were unable to score. And suddenly we were sitting there 7-0. And I was just a little uncomfortable with how ineffective the offense was. But then in the second quarter, a major turning point. Jake Browning throws an interception to Amik Robertson, and the Lions get the ball inside the 20, and they would very quickly score on that drive thanks to a David Montgomery passing touchdown lined up in Wildcat. He throws it to Brock Wright, and he gets a passing touchdown, his second passing touchdown as a Lion. The Lions take a 2-touchdown lead, and it was a very nice moment for David Montgomery, who was playing in his hometown for the first time since high school. So it was nice to see him get a fun little touchdown there because he was a quarterback back in the day. So kind of a little throwback for him, and that was nice to see. And the Lions get a 2-touchdown lead, as I said, which felt a lot better. Then a couple drives later, just a very bizarre and odd sequence of events. So the Bengals are backed up inside their own 5, and Aiden Hutchinson gets a sack for a safety. The Lions get 2 points, and nope, they actually don't, because there was a flag on the play. Terrion Arnold gets dinged for holding, and it was a hold, wiping out a safety, wiping out a second Aiden Hutchinson sack. Hutchinson had a sack in this game. He had 3, but 2 were called back due to penalty. That's 3 sacks in the last 2 weeks that Hutchinson has had wiped off the board for a guy that we're hoping can compete for Defensive Player of the Year. That kind of sucks because he's up to 5 sacks on the season now. He very well could be at 8 and be leading the league. Unfortunate, but what are you going to do? And then the next play, Terrion Arnold gets a very nice PBU against T. Higgins. And then the play after, he almost gets an interception against Jamar Chase as he gets a PBU and he drops the ball, but Chase had to throw him out of bounds to prevent it. Chase turned into the defender on that play. So you get a holding penalty, wipes out a safety. Then you get 2 back-to-back pass breakups. And then Jake Browning chucks the ball downfield and Terrion Arnold has the ball coming to him. It is a gift of a first career interception, except Kirby Joseph decides that he wanted it more, and he jumps in front of Arnold, knocks him to the ground, gets the interception himself. Kirby Joseph's 3rd of the season already. He has been fantastic so far as a ball hawk, just picking up where he left off last year. His 3rd interception, Browning's 2nd of the half, and the Lions get the ball again in scoring range. So naturally, the Lions went 3-0 and would have to punt. And then a little bit of an interesting kind of game theory thing. The Lions were happy to punt it and leave the Bengals inside the 10 once again, as opposed to trying a 59-yard field goal. Kind of pick your poison based on how the game was going to that point. I don't blame Dan Campbell for doing that, and it worked out. Because while a 59-yard field goal was possible, if you miss it, the Bengals start from midfield and maybe they go on to score a touchdown. They do go on a nice drive to end the half, but they end with a field goal, much to the dismay of Bengals fans that were relentlessly booing them. So at halftime, the Lions are up 14-3, and I'm sitting there being like, you know what? I'm not quite thrilled with how this game is going so far. The offense has not been as effective as it can be, and I want to see more points. I want to see the Lions put up 21 points in the second half, get me to 35 points, and I'll be happy. Bengals started the second half with the ball, and the Lions decided that they wanted to start getting the scoring ways going early as Jake Browning fires his third interception of the game to Alex Anzalone, who, by the way, was incredible in this game, and that would set up the Lions offense, who would get into the end zone again on a Jahmyr Gibbs screen pass. Fun little concept. Jahmyr Gibbs lined up as a wide receiver. Laporta motions out. Isaac TeSlaa is the other guy, so you have two bigger bodies blocking. Gibbs in open space is a cheat code. He makes people miss. He dragged people forward into the end zone, and the Lions take a 3-score lead, which was fantastic. And then they would add more points on their next drive with David Montgomery getting into the end zone after a long drive to put us to a score of 28-3. And you're thinking, okay, 28-3, we're entering blowout territory. We can put this on cruise control for the rest of the game, right? Wrong, because the Bengals decided that this whole not actually being good at offense thing was getting a little old, and so they decided on their next 3 drives to gain 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Woof. This game got interesting in a hurry. The first one being a fantastic throw by Browning to Jamar Chase, who little toe tap in the end zone, and then the next drive, Amik Robertson got shaken out of his cleats, and Jamar Chase beats him for a bomb of a touchdown, and suddenly it made the game rather interesting. The Lions, thankfully, when they got back on offense, they would go on a long touchdown drive. Isaac TeSlaa found out how to catch the ball with 2 hands, getting his second career touchdown, which would put the game out of reach, but the Bengals went on another scoring drive, and they made it a 11-point game, and I was not happy. Then the Lions, as they're trying to wind clock after they recover the onside kick, Jared Goff takes a sack, and that puts them out of field goal range, and they have to punt it down inside the 10-yard line. Again, great game by Jack Fox, by the way. And at this point, it's like, okay, the Lions are probably going to win, but if the Bengals go the length of the field here, go 93 yards and make this a 1-score game, I'm not going to be happy. Thankfully, Derek Barnes put a stop to that, just beating the left guard cleanly. Didn't even get touched by the guard, and he sacks Jake Browning for a safety. That one actually did count, and that gets us to our final score of 37-24. Moving on to key standouts, we're starting on the offensive side of the ball, and Sam Laporta had by far his best game of the season so far, 5 catches for 92 yards and a score. He was doing a great job of making things happen after the catch. The Bengals really struggle with allowing yards after the catch, and Laporta is really good as one of the best tight ends in the league at making things happen after the catch, so he was doing great all day, a couple of big plays there. David Montgomery, as I said, he was returning to his hometown in this one, and he had a couple of touchdowns, a passing and a rushing touchdown. He led the way with 18 carries for 65 yards in this one, and he was just a very steady presence for the Lions on the ground, which was needed because, I don't know, the ground game wasn't spectacular, but Montgomery was his usual effective self. Jared Goff also did his thing, 19 completions on 23 attempts for 258 and 3. He had a passer rating of 153 in this one. He did have a fumble, obviously, on a Trey Hendrickson strip sack, and he was sacked 3 times. The protection was pretty okay throughout the game, considering some factors that we'll talk about in a second, but Jared Goff also ran himself into one of those sacks, so just wasn't great. Actually, he was sacked 4 times in reality. It was 2 by Hendrickson, 1 by Joseph Osai at the end, and there was another one earlier in the game that Goff walked himself into, as I was mentioning. So not the best day for him standing in the pocket, but he also did good when he was passing the ball downfield. So yeah, we'll take it. Defensively, Aiden Hutchinson was as disruptive as you would want him to be. Again, he should have had 3 sacks in this game. He hit Jake Browning at least 6 or 7 times. He was getting pressure all day long. He had a fantastic game. Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone were phenomenal from the linebacker spot. Derek Barnes, too, also had a nice game. He obviously had the sack at the end to seal, but Alex Anzalone was the standout for this one defensively. He was everywhere. Multiple pass breakups, an interception, in on a ton of tackles. It was a fantastic game from Alex Anzalone. Amik Robertson had the interception, and he was playing well for most of the game, but getting beat on that long touchdown by Chase left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, so I don't want to shout him out too much, but I will shout out Rock Ya-Sin, who was filling in for the injured DJ Reed in this one, and the injured Terrion Arnold. When the Lions would go into their nickel sets, it was Terrion on the outside, Rock Ya-Sin on the outside, and Amik Robertson in the slot, and then Terrion did not finish this game with that shoulder injury, so Rock Ya-Sin will presumably be a starting corner next week, which I don't know how you feel about that, but he performed very valiantly in this one. He did have some cramping issues, but when he was on the field, he was effective. As for guys that maybe had down games in this one, we're going to start on offense, and we're going to start with Jameson Williams, who, coming off a brutal game against the Browns, was just kind of invisible in this one. He started the game with one carry for 1 yard that didn't go anywhere, and the one catch for 9 yards, and that was it. He just was not involved in this one, and I was kind of surprised because this was a defense that you can presumably pass deep down the field on, and I was expecting a shot play or two to JMO in this one, and it just never materialized. He wasn't a part of the game plan. That's going to happen every now and again, but not encouraging. And Graham Glasgow had a couple of negative moments in this one too. He had a brutal penalty. He had a couple plays where he got beat very cleanly, too cleanly. He's had a bit of an season so far from that center spot. But the bigger problem on the offensive line is Giovanni Manu had to start in this one because Taylor Decker was unable to suit up. He gave up 2 sacks in this one to Trey Hendrickson, that was a turnover, and one at the end of the game to Joseph Osai. He's very raw as a prospect still, and I will say the Lions didn't do the best job of helping him out in some of those plays. They didn't chip nearly enough for my liking, and they left him on an island quite a bit. He was fine considering expectations, but it was not good. Taylor Decker, I need you to be healthy for next week because I just don't love it. Manu's going to continue to develop, and these reps that he got in a real NFL game are going to be valuable to learn from, but it was definitely a bit of a learning experience for that guy. I also have one criticism of John Morton, and this is actually all offensive coordinators around the league. Can we stop blocking elite edge rushers with the tight end? We saw it last week when the Lions were doing this with Myles Garrett, and the Browns were doing it with Aiden Hutchinson, and the Bengals did that a couple times in this game. The Lions tried to block Trey Hendrickson with a tight end multiple times, and it was Brock Wright usually, and it went horribly every single time. Hendrickson's second sack of the day was genuinely one of the most just sad things to watch. Brock Wright got completely pantsed on that play. Just why are you putting him in a position to fail? I didn't like it. To end on a positive note, though, I do want to shout out the special teams that were absolutely fantastic. Jacob Saylors had by far his best kick return of the season to start the game to get the Lions over the 40-yard line on the opening drive. And the kick returns were overall pretty decent. The kick coverage was fantastic all day as the Bengals really struggled with their returns. On their kick returns, they had 6 kick returns, only averaging 25.7 yards. There was one that went for 37 that was a little too good. But aside from that, they were doing a fantastic job on that coverage. Jack Fox was fantastic in this one as well. I believe he pinned the Bengals inside the 10-yard line 4 times, which is spectacular. You don't want to have him punting that often, but if he's going to punt, at least do a good job, and he's one of the best in the business. He had a fantastic game. Isaac Teslaw also had a fantastic rep, downing a punt inside the 5, making sure he saves that football, and it put the Bengals back at the 3. So the coverage was fantastic on the punts. There weren't any returns, but the Gunners were getting down there very quickly, and Jack Fox was doing a fantastic job pinning them deep. Also, Jake Bates, I want to shout out. He was very consistent with his kickoffs, getting the ball to be at the goal line, so they would have to return it from the goal line. Just helped the kick coverage out a little bit, and so that was good to see. Special teams in general have been much improved the last 2 weeks. Speaking of the special teams, though, we will end on this note. Khalif Raymond did leave this game with a neck injury after a very awkward play where he stumbled into a hit that resulted in his head getting squished. He left this game, did not return. Wishing the best for him. He was able to walk off, which was very encouraging to see. But yeah, do just want to flag that. Hopefully Khalif Raymond is okay, because that was a scary looking injury. Aside from that, though, that is going to be it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, consider hitting the like button down below and subscribing with notifications turned on. Thank you to everyone who checked out the stream today. If you don't know, I stream during every single Lions game, so if you are new here, make sure you have those notifications checked so that you don't miss any of those streams. And I'll be back later in the week with some more content. Until then, my friends, cheers.